Africans as we celebrate the rights and freedoms that come with U.S. citizenship. Ready to take the first step in the naturalization process? More information. Contact us at 312-949-9980 or 773-420-8976 or visit us at www.uniteafricans.org. The Progressive Minds is supported by the United African Organization, presenting citizenship application assistance workshops to assist green card holders to become U.S. citizens. Becoming a citizen is easier than you think, and it protects you and your family. Your voice can be heard through your vote, and becoming a citizen allows you to do that. Ever want someone from your community to represent you? Become a citizen and run for public office. Join Unite Africans as we celebrate the rights and freedoms that come with U.S. citizenship. Ready to take the first step in the naturalization process? More information. Contact us at 312-949-9980 or 773-420-8976 or visit us at www.uniteafricans.org. The Progressive Minds is supported by the United African Organization, presenting citizenship application assistance workshops to assist green card holders to become U.S. citizens. Becoming a citizen is easier than you think, and it protects you and your family. Your voice can be heard through your vote, and becoming a citizen allows you to do that. Ever want someone from your community to represent you? Become a citizen and run for public office. Join Unite Africans as we celebrate the rights and freedoms that come with U.S. citizenship. Ready to take the first step in the
Welcome, everyone. This is Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna. It is a privilege to come your way again. We have been doing a replay for the past 2 weeks due to work schedules, but we are glad that we have the opportunity to come and engage with the community again. Remember, this is the #1 community building platform here in the diaspora, and we are going to be talking to the folks from the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. I hope I got it right, but Vicky will correct me once we come on. It's a long title, but I think I'm very close. However, we're going to be engaging them today. We're going to focus on the rights to culture, the rights of people of color or minority to their culture and education. We'll get into the details of it. Have a great panel this evening to engage us this evening. I must say that my co-host Chanel is not available this evening due to ill health, so we ask that you all pray for her. If you're watching us on Facebook, please share it so your friends and ours can participate and be part of the community building agenda. We are also currently live on YouTube and Twitter. Once you come on, please like the page, turn on the notification so that each time we come on, you can get the notification that we're here. So please remember to share it and notify your friends that the Progressive Mind Show is live this evening. Now, let's go straight to our panel. We have, I think that, we'll do this. Vicky is a little, she'll come back. No, Vicky is here, but Cecile is the one that we need to get back into the feed. Dr. Vicky Casanova is part of the United Forum, but go ahead. Please help me with the title again.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you good.
Excellent. Well, I'm actually in New York City at the moment as we speak. I stepped into a back room. This is the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. You said that exactly correctly.
Yes.
And we are members of the International Civil Society Working Group, which you were so gracious to bring several of us and one of our co-chairs on a couple of weeks ago in anticipation of this permanent forum kicking off at the UN in New York, which it did today.
Absolutely.
So you'll hear more from my other colleagues, but we thank you, Brother Senna, and the Progressive Minds radio show and Beyond Radio. for consistently ensuring that people
Yes.
of African ancestry and diaspora get to tell our own stories.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vicky, we're grateful and happy to have you here once again. Queen Mother Ayo Ifafunke Osunye, Tony Reynolds. Your audio is off, so please. Awesome.
Good evening. How are you doing today?
I am very well, Queen Mother. It's a pleasure to have you on first time on the show. Is that Queen Mother in Nigeria, Igbo, Yoruba? Which one?
Yoruba.
Yoruba. Beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful. And you were looking very queenish this evening. I must say. No, you're looking very royal, and I appreciate your presence this evening. Go ahead.
I appreciate the invitation too.
You're welcome. And we would like to know a little bit about. Okay, first of all, let's come back to Cecile is not a stranger on this show. Cecile Johnson is a human rights activist, and she's also part of the United Nations, as Vicky said, Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. She focuses on the African Development Plan, centered around African curriculum. Cecile, welcome again to the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And then we have, lastly on the list is Ambassador Reverend Kwame Kamau, who is all the way in, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in Trinidad. Is that correct?
Indeed, I am. Can you hear me loud and clear?
We can hear you. Your audio keeps going in and out. Okay, we can the audio keeps going in and out. So okay.
What about now? Are we okay now?
Yes.
Beautiful. Yes, indeed. You are quite correct. I am from those beautiful twins in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. Greeting you, of course, live and alive. Certainly, it's a pleasure to be here with my very distinguished colleagues, inclusive of Madam Ambassador, Dr. Vicky Casanova Willis, of course, a Queen Mother out of the Yoruba community, and a sister who certainly for our Caribbean preparatory conference did such human service in terms of the need for disaggregated data within our community. Sister Cecile Johnson, you are indeed a magnificent personality. I'm a great fan of yours. So just happy to be here on tonight with you, brother.
Thank you. I really appreciate that brief intro. Now, I'm actually also very interested in knowing a little bit, not just me, but our audience would like to know a little bit more about Queen and Ambassador. Vicky and Johnson have, they have been here before, so we have a fair understanding. But Queen Mother, first of all, which part of the United States are you, and what is your role with the PFPAD? I have learned, Vicky.
That was good. PFAD, we call it.
Okay, PFAD. There you go.
That's the short version. I am in Kansas City, Missouri, United States, of course. And I am an Ifa priestess. I'm also a holistic therapist. Okay. I teach Reiki. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I am also a certified yoga instructor that I've been doing for 50 years. And now I'm a Kundalini yoga instructor. So I combine everything that I do. I'm also a master herbalist. So everything that I do is everything that I do. And I love being part of this permanent forum on people of African descent, also called PFAD. And I was able to sit in on the United Nations Zoom, well, not Zoom, but through their web TV today. And it was very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I got to hear a lot of beautiful people saying what we've been saying for the 74 years of my life. So it's time for something to change.
Thank you. How long, when did you join PFAD?
Maybe about 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago.
Okay. No, great. And was it an invitation you got from Vicky, or how did that happen?
One of the other members, Prophet Cox, Prophet Anyanwu Cox, is a friend of mine. We've done a lot of holistic work together over the last 20 years. She's the one who knew about it and called me and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And of course I said yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Ambassador, can you give us a bit of background to your title? Of course, we know who an ambassador is, but are you an ambassador for Trinidad in America or vice versa? Can you give us a little background?
Sure, absolutely. So I am an African reparations minister and diplomat. I represent and I operate within an intersectional space, which is to say, because colonization, chattel slavery, the Maangamizi, the Ma'afa, this great Holocaust that has happened to our people intergenerationally was interdisciplinary and operating within intersectional spheres to eviscerate body, mind, soul, and spirit, to dumb us down and to cause us to be less than our whole selves, the 3/5 human being that the American Constitution likes to talk about in relation to our personage. That's not the African they met. The African they met was 1000% human being. But when you have removed the name, when you have removed the language, when you've removed culture, when you've removed their African education and rites of passage systems, when you have removed, as it were, all of their various rites of passage and their spirituality, the original Ubuntu spirituality, then what you have is a shell of a human being. And so African Reparations Ministries is really all about an intersectional approach, a diplomatic approach, where apart from the state, there are several diplomats. There are diplomats that represent state interests. There are diplomats that represent royal interests. And there are diplomats that represent civil society interests. In my case, I represent royal interests on behalf of the African Young Indigenous Leaders, on behalf of the United House of Monarchs, on behalf of other royal groups within the continent of Africa. But I also represent, as an ambassador as well, civil society interests, including, of course, the CSWG, CPAN, Emancipation Support Committee, and other very noteworthy local, regional, and international groupings, Congress of African People, the Comprehensive Health Equity Movement, and many, many others. So basically, it's a conglomerate. It's a coming together of several persons within royal and civil society to represent our interests in various platforms, inclusive of this amazing PFAD forum.
That's powerful. You're also a Reverend Minister. What, you mind sharing the denomination?
Sure, that's a very important question. I was born and raised actually in Rastafari, so big up to all the Idrin and Sistrin from the Caribbean, you know what I mean? And so with regards to Rastafarian community, born and raised there. Eventually, I transitioned into the Christian community where I was a part of the full gospel community as a lean, mean preaching machine for several years. I wore every hat that one could wear in that community. Eventually, I would have transitioned into the Hebrew Israelite community and the Bantu African Hebrew Israelite community in particular. And I would have studied and worked within that community. Once you study the African Israelite tradition, you would know that the Israelite tradition really begins in Africa, in ancient Kemet. And so I had to transition to ancient Kemet. But finally, when I got to ancient Kemet said to me, by way of all of the Medunecha, by way of all of the sacred scrolls and writings, that we aren't the original. While we're a powerful civilization, it is Kush, it is Nubia, it is what we call today the Congo, the Embo Empire. That's who we owe everything to. And so I would have done this amazing sacred journey. And today I am an Ubuntu priest, an Ubuntu practitioner, where I utilize all of the various sacred, as it were, not just cultural, but spiritual practices of our individuals that have, of course, African ancestry. So it's a potpourri, a coming together of many threads to represent who and what I am today as an omniist.
Wow. Okay.
I share.
I think we can end
I
the show
say,
right here.
Yeah, that
okay.
May I
We-
interject?
yes, go ahead.
I also described you, Brother Sena, to him as well. I didn't say this, but he could hold up the mirror because he also is an extraordinarily important part of the Indaba radio family, and you all have some connections to make.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for connecting that dot. It's very, very important. And I appreciate you being representative of African royalty at PFAD. I think is very, very important because we're doing a royalty kind of program in Chicago. We call it Restoring the Royalty of the Diaspora. So we are bringing kings from Ghana. Eventually, will be kings from Africa who will be traveling to the diaspora to crown kings and queens here. And we started last year. This year, we're doing it again. So very important that we engage after this show. So thank you so much, Cecile. I know you've been doing working within the space for a long time. Since when have you been working with PFAD?
it's been a while because I've given. It was Vicky as well as Sifiwe, who invited me. And so in that space, what I do is I provide, I do a number of workshops, but I provide information on why the data is so important. My job has been to research the state of Black America, and I've done some of the same thing with Africa, but to show, what's really happening to us. The problem with us here in America is because we're in a developing country, most people who want to come here so that they can improve themselves. They don't necessarily always identify, other than with the George Floyd and, that big fiasco that happened, right? That Black people in America, the Afro descendants, the African Americans, are in a critical crisis. I call it genocidal. So my research is based on that. And then I tie the research and the data to human rights laws and show how we are violating. The United States loves to talk to everyone about human rights, and it's the greatest violator of our human rights. So that's where I'm at with that.
Thank you. Vicky, so what when we spoke, you said the forum had resumed today and there was a whole bunch of conversations going on. Can we give a brief understanding can we give our audience an insight to what is happening today and why the four of you are engaged in that UN conversation? You are in Geneva, actually.
I am in the UN. So the UN is also in the US, right? Headquarters in the United States in New York City.
So you are in New York right now.
I am, and I stepped into a back room from one of many side events or side sessions, they call them. I'm at the church center.
Okay.
We were just wrapping up. So what happens is that people can actually follow the proceedings on UN Web TV. But that will be the morning and afternoon regular plenary sessions. And on the 5 themes that they've taken up this second session. When you had us on, we had already been a part of the December launch, which was in Geneva, Switzerland. You're right. The follow-up it started today, and it runs through the week through June 2nd. Here in New York City, people convened, many of them yesterday, on the city, as you can imagine, traveling to be here for the start of this session, very important session. And there are debates happening on the floor of the UN with regards to the themes of reparatory justice. There are 5 that were really elevated by civil society to be on the agenda. Reparatory justice, Pan-Africanism, which I know that you're involved in all of these. And the media plays a huge role in human rights education, right? So we appreciate you utilizing your platform to ensure that people don't have to only be able to travel to the actual UN buildings, either in Switzerland or New York for the US, but they can engage in putting forth on the people's agenda. Right. That's really what this is about. Right. So I will finish with the five. The themes are reparatory justice, transnational migration, and also Pan-Africanism, health, and data, disaggregated data. So within that, in fact, the event that I stepped out of just now is another one, very important, that the International Civil Society Working Group for the Permanent Forum, just meaning it's the people's movement and the people's work to make sure that a permanent forum or whatever mechanism is fully resourced, fully respected, and we will tell you that at this moment it is not, because the United Nations is made up of the member states, colonizing nations that formed the United Nations back in 1948, which of course we were not on the agenda, right? Women generally were not on the agenda. So many people, including white males without property, were not on the agenda. So we are working, in fact, this is the 75th anniversary year of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which sets forth 30 specific rights that everyone has, no matter your circumstances of your birth, where you were born, ability, age, gender, your religion, socioeconomic, none of it. 30 rights, and two of them, very importantly today, we wanted to uplift the right to culture, as you've shared, and right to education, and for people to look up that language, read it, and use it, utilize it. We have a right to culture and a right to education. You would not know that in the places that are denying African and African American history, for example, that will suppress the brilliance and beauty of Caribbean culture.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Go ahead, Cecile.
No, and so forth.
Okay, great. Cecile, I was going to ask you, why is it even important to have this, to engage in these conversations? How important is it to the African, the Caribbean here in the United States? The reason why I ask is that we seem to not necessarily connect with some of these higher issues because of some of the, maybe sometimes the struggles that we have to endure and the stress of living in this country, working back and forth, which is all good. But why should the African, the Caribbean descent be concerned or be interested in this conversation right here?
Because this is a conversation that's going to lead to the world understanding more about why we need reparations, right? Okay. So I'm from Jamaica, so I'm from the Caribbean, but I've lived in the United States over 40-something years. So I'm as African-American as an African-American, right? And when it comes to these issues, we don't have enough conversations with ourselves. So the Caribbean, the African descendants, we're like 400 million Afro descendants external to Africa in the diaspora, right? Plus the 1 point how much billion on the continent. So we're almost 2 billion people globally. So this is an opportunity for us to come together. And what is really beautiful about the message that's happening is how consistent everyone's message is about the discriminations that are happening and the outcomes for us when it comes to education, economics, all of this, right? So whether you're in a Black country or you're not, it doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. You're still feeling those remnants of colonialism. And all of us, it's not just African people, because you had Asian and other people, Indians and others who experienced this. So this is really a big issue, right? And for this is the end of the decade, almost of the decade next year, of the people of African descent. And most people in the world never heard of the decade of people of African descent. So as Vicky said, we have a PFAD now, the Permanent Forum. That's a very recent creation. However, it hasn't been funded, right? So if you're serious about these things, why does everything for us have to take decades, right? And we are the people who everybody knows what happened to us. We are those people. So why is it that justice for us takes so long? So today's conversation was real, and it was good to hear Russia and some of the other countries, not the old colonizers, right? The old colonizers don't mention anything about Durban and, why this is so. They'll tell you about their local activities. But, other countries did talk about why reparations should be on the agenda.
Okay.
And so that's why this is important.
Very, very important you mentioned that. You said other countries like Russia talked about how reparations and stuff is important. That takes us to Macron's apology and his efforts to compensate some African countries. And he mentioned about $8 trillion that they're looking at as the package, the reparation package that they intend on compensating some of the West African countries with. How viable is that? And I think that I want to ask, how optimistic are you when you hear Macron speak the way he spoke, connecting it to the support you just said that the Russian president had, the voice that the Russian president has added to this conversation. How crucial do you think? And do you think, first of all, do you think that's something that's going to come to fruition? They're going to follow through it?
It will come to fruition if we insist and we enforce, because they like to talk, right? We've had MDGs and everybody talked, and they were supposed to give 0.07 of their GDP, and they did not. So every time something is focused on it, people open their mouth and they speak. We would like for the talking to stop and for the reparations to start. So I don't say it's not impossible, because why go for an effort that we don't believe in? I believe we're going to get reparations, but we have to do what the Jews did, which is to let the whole globe understand it. And they used media to plant that seed in people's heads so that we became sympathetic to their cause. And we need the world to see us as human beings and be sympathetic to our cause. So yes, I believe we will get reparations, because we're in a new time and people have just about had enough. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you so much. Queen Mother.
May I be out of the process and just add to that a little bit?
Okay.
A part of my dissertation, my doctoral work, was on the right to culture. And also, I just wanted to mention there's something that I learned about that I didn't know the term until I went into this doctoral process, but it's called interest convergence, right? We all have seen it before. It's when action is taken that just coincidentally happens at the most opportunistic time. And that is what we're seeing and hearing. Every time there is a human rights forum that is forthcoming, we have seen action taken every time that no one says is linked to the fact that they know that over 1,000 delegates of African ancestry are convening in New York City this week with the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent to hold member states of the UN basically accountable to their international responsibilities and our rights. So, there is a lot happening that seems like it's random, but we need to understand that the people's work does count. It does matter. That's my point.
Thank you so much. Queen Mother, I was going to ask you, and I'll come to you, Ambassador, in a little bit. First of all, I just want to get a quick response to the question that I asked Cecile earlier. Do you believe in the statement of the president of France, Mr. Macron? Do you see sincerity in that statement?
Would you refresh my memory to the
statement? I'm sorry. I'm just assuming that you know it. So he I think a month ago or so, if I'm not mistaken, a month or two ago, a few months ago, he did apologize for France's involvement in the transatlantic slavery, especially on the sub-Saharan Africa, and touched on touching a few things, and also pledged that they were estimating that the monies or the wealth that they got from engaging in slavery on the coast of West Africa would be in the tune of a certain amount. So they came up with an estimation and saying, look, we couldn't doing a rough estimation, they're thinking about $8 trillion And this is the amount he is saying that they intend to compensate these African countries that France has benefited from. Having paraphrased that, do you think that if the French president is saying that in 2023, you think there's some seriousness to it?
I think there's some seriousness to it. However, when it trickles down to our individual communities, our states, across the globe, is it really going to happen? I think he was serious, and it's powerful that someone of that stature has made that statement, and I love it. So my thing is, I see that as a beginning, because being 74 years old, I've seen and experienced some things on this planet and in this city. So I've seen and been a part of organization after organization after organization that talk, and nothing ever happened. So I'm optimistic about something happening now, because it's gone global. So it's not just us anymore in our individual communities. The world has come together and says, it's time to fess up that you have hurt not just the people where I live, but the people where you live, the people where they live, the people where those people live, and somebody needs to be accountable. So I think it's powerful, and it is my hope and my prayer that something comes out of this that's positive.
Awesome. Great point. When you said 74, I'm like, yes.
I know.
You're great. So that's beautiful too. Thanks for your input. I really appreciate that. And Ambassador, why is it important to seek or to push this message of the rights of anyone to have access, the right to culture? What is that? How significant is that? Because I mean, Africans or people of African descent, they have their culture anyway. It doesn't seem like anybody is coming to take our culture from us. We have all the festivals we want to have in the diaspora, and nobody comes to stop us. So why is it important to move this conversation forward, or to push for the rights for culture for people of African descent in the diaspora? Reverend.
That's a brilliant question. Please allow me first to correct something has been said previously. While I would love to sit here and concur that France's apology and France's move towards engaging reparations is, one, genuine, and two, going to lead to the benefit of our people in West Africa, the Francophone nations that had to, coming out of the independence movement, sign these pacts for recolonization under France, where we have every year siphoned out of these Francophone nations hundreds of millions of dollars. Some 80% of their GDP is stored in French banks. And if they must access any portion of it, they must access it based on commercial lending rates, their own monies from France. Madam Ambassador Arikana Shiambori-Kwao, the former UN ambassador to the US, has exposed the very unbalanced neo-colonial stranglehold that France still has on Africa. We know that people like Julius Malema in South Africa, though he's part of the opposition party, that has come out with these mandates requesting that the French government indeed atone for the evils that not only have they committed in terms of slavery and colonization, but post-colonization in the neo-colonization context. France even goes on to say to African nations, if you want to engage in any type of mega project that involves international agencies or international contractors, we want, need, and have signed to receive what we call the first right of refusal. It means then, therefore, that they cannot go to anyone else in the international community unless they pass their contracts through France first. If France accepts, then so be it. If France rejects it and says, no, we don't want this contract, then anyone else can have access. I wish I could sit here now and credibly say to you, as a representative of civil society and royal monarchs, that this statement was indeed true and fact. What happened is that someone put together a script and utilized video to create what we call a satirical piece, which is to say that pretending to be the voice of the French president, they put together a ruse, a satirical ruse, to suggest that this is what the French president should be doing. This is what France should be doing. They should be apologizing. They should be engaging in restitution. They should be given compensation. They should be involved in rehabilitation. They should be involved in satisfaction. And they absolutely should be involved in guarantees of non-repetition in terms of the evils, the atrocities that they have done to Africans, again, within the Francophone nations. Unfortunately, it is but only satire. And so it is a very sad day when you watch a video material and the satirical nature of it has content that makes your heart feel glad, but it's not based on the French position and the French what we call foreign policy in terms of dealing with the Francophone nations. It was a satirical piece done by one of us.
You were just saying that whole video was a hoax.
I wouldn't use those words, but again, because of the satirical nature of it, I am seeing what the author was trying to do. He is pointing to France and saying, this is what you should do. In other words, if the best news coming out of France is fake news and satire, that's a real bad look for France. And so it forces France now to examine its position, especially insofar as we are having these international conversations now, and say to themselves, since we've been outed like this, we have to look at our position in a real way. And so it was really clever. I don't think they would have gotten so much views if they came out and said it was a satire. But I guess, you know, fake news travels fast.
Ambassador, so does it make PFAT, right? Does it make the stance of PFAT or the work PFAT doing even more crucial, because now you add your voice to some of these conversations? You can pressure international governments such as France to do right by these Francophone nations and other nations that may have suffered due to some of the atrocities that were meted out to them by some of these European nations. It doesn't make PFAD very crucial in this conversation. Yeah,
in a word, yes, absolutely. 1,000%.
I would want Cecile to respond to that. How significant?
Definitely, because like I said to you, the strategy that others have used in the past was through media, right? And say, here I am in Jamaica, I'm a child, and I'm watching QB7, right? And I'm watching and I'm reading about Anne Frank. So globally, through the education process, I'm being acculturated and softened and made sympathetic or empathetic to a serious crime that happened. So it's the same thing that has to happen to us. That leads into what we call, why we're saying that we need culture and we need education, right? Because our global educational system, I'm coming out of the Caribbean, and I knew more about America than most Americans when I got here, right? And anywhere what I was studying in Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, you in Nigeria and Ghana, wherever you were, English-speaking country, we were all learning the same thing. But what were we learning about ourselves, right? So we know that education is very critical, because through education, you can soften people, you can humanize them to these types of human rights and issues and things like that. And the education that we're getting globally doesn't. It makes us think like them and react in their way, and leaves us out. Sometimes the insult is that you're not even mentioned. I use the example of Miss Johnson, who got them through her calculations, got them to the moon. But I learned about John Glenn. Well, hell, you know what I'm saying? He just went on a ride. Miss Johnson actually had the mind, along with those other Black women, to create, right, the calculation that got them to the moon.
Right. Absolutely.
Why did it take 60 years for me to learn that? That's an insult to her, and it's an insult to me, because that same way across the board, Black children go to school, and that's why they're doing so horribly, because the curriculum doesn't engage them. They don't see themselves in it. They just see through media negative stereotypes, etc. And so the curriculum has to change. And so part of what was mentioned today, part of what I'm pushing, we're here to talk about culture and education, is that we need an African-centered curriculum. Just like how the British were able to put the same curriculum in all of their colonies, the French got the same curriculum in all of their colonies. Hey, we are African people. We need the same curriculum in all of our places. That we begin to learn about us, because we are the original people of the earth, right? We have pyramids that are still standing, while their stuff looks like, after 100 years, it looks like foolishness, right? So come on now. We are the original people of the earth. Everybody acknowledges that. Then why do you treat us this way? So we need our culture, we need our education, and we need to control what we are taught, so that we can get out of this mindset.
Okay. I will have Dr. Vicky come in a little bit, but Queen Mother, I asked a question to Ambassador earlier, which I'll go back to, which is why is it important to fight for the rights for culture?
Because if we don't, who will? So
okay, and I asked a question earlier. Okay, so who will? So that's what you're doing. So as I was asking earlier, one will ask why there's no problem with culture. Africans or people in the diaspora are freely are allowed to freely display their culture, celebrate it. Hence, we see all these festivals that we see when summer comes, and so again, one will wonder why the fight for the right of culture. Is it under attack?
Is that time?
I'm sorry, to Queen Mother. I'm sorry.
Queen Mother?
Yes, Queen Mother, and then I'll come to Reverend Ambassador, because I asked you the question earlier, and I want to give the opportunity to respond to it. But let me go to Queen Mother.
Can we call this an attack? If it's
maybe not an attack. We can take the word out. We can take the word
out.
No,
leave it in, because there's different areas of attack.
Okay.
So removing our information and hiding it from us, and other people around the world know our history where we were never taught it, that's an attack. It's an attack in the back door. So I'm in that generation that in elementary school, our maps of the world showed Africa this small and America this big. I had to be over 30 years old before I ever saw a map, and I was like, is that map wrong? Because that's not what I learned when I grew up. So I see that as an attack. Omission of our information, omission of who we are. I see that as an attack. So
why is it? Thank you so much, Ambassador. You can respond to the question now. Why is it important to uphold the culture of the African people so dearly? How significant is that in our way of life, in our development as a people? Because look, the people are saying we need jobs, we need factories. All these developed worlds are building skyscrapers and building infrastructure. Why should Black people worry about culture? How crucial is culture to us as a people, Reverend?
How much time do I have?
You have 2 minutes.
It's interesting, I promise you. All right. So I said to you that I'm an Ubuntu priest. I'm an Ubuntu practitioner.
Yes.
When we examine what Ubuntu means, it's I am because you are. You are, therefore I am. Basically, it's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. When we examine the Tripitaka, that is the sacred scripture of the Buddhists, it contains elements of Ubuntu there. That's what they use to build, as it were, China, build these Asian nations. When we look at the Mahabharata, we see again that golden rule principle of Ubuntu there. This sense of cooperative economics, this sense of unity, this sense of interconnectedness and interdependence, this sense of love, this sense of working together for the greater good of all. When we turn to, as it were, Confucianism, we see the same African cultural, philosophical elements of Ubuntu there, written in their texts. When we turn to Christianity, in the mouth of Yeshua HaMashiach, whom they call Jesus the Christ, let's break down that word Christ. Christ comes from the word Christos. Christos comes from the Kemetic African word, which means, or which is, sorry, Kares. What is the Kares? The Kares is, as it were, the anointed one. Why were you anointed? It was an initiation rite where you died to your lower self, your carnal self, and you were reborn in the spirit. So for 2,000 years, people have been thinking that Christ is the last name of Jesus, when in fact, it is proof of the pudding that Jesus, really Yeshua HaMashiach, was indoctrinated and went through the African initiation rites of the Kares. That's how important culture is. Culture covers everything. It informs everything. So the Western governmental, as it were, what we would refer to as philosophy, they say that comes from the 10 Commandments, but the 10 Commandments comes from the 42, as it were, laws of Ma'at, the so-called negative confessions. And so it means then, therefore, to whom is given the power to tell the story, whether from a cultural perspective or from an education perspective, they have control over the minds. Once you have control over the minds, you have control over the hands, you have control over the feet, you have control over the heart, you have control over all of those economic, social, environmental things are rooted in one sense of identity, one sense of responsibility, and one's identity, one's responsibility comes from one's culture. I will end by saying, because I know that the time is short, that we have a high culture as a people, and that high culture is Ubuntu. So while we have Yoruba, while we have and their practice of Ile Ife, while we have the Medunecha and that Ma'atan culture, while we have so many different cultures, the Evevio, they have their culture, the Ibu, they have their culture, but that's specific individual tribal kingdom culture. When Africa comes together as one federated, united kingdom of Ubuntu, we are talking about our high culture, we are talking about the great civilization culture that gave birth to Kemet, gave birth to Sumer, gave birth to Akkad, gave birth to Assyria, gave birth to Persia, gave birth to Iran, gave birth to Iraq. I'll have to land there. So culture is everything. To the man that has and the woman that has culture, they have life, they have an identity, and with that life, with that identity, with that philosophy, they can now solve their problems utilizing those things that are indigenous to them, those things that are natural to them, without using that which is foreign to them, which they can't really use at all. I land.
Wow.
What he said.
Yes, great. Thank you so much for giving us the in-depth understanding of why we should know our culture. That said, do you think that, let me ask you, maybe yes or no, do you think, generally speaking, would you all say that Africans in general, both on the continent and in the diaspora, know and understand our culture? Would you say that is reality or no? Let me start with Vicky. A quick yes or no.
Oh, I cannot do that, but I'm going to say this. For all of the reasons that you've just heard from each of us, and I'm going to push back on those cute little they're brilliant and beautiful, many of them, the festivals in Chicago. It
And
is
across the state, across
mischaracterization.
the U.S., across the country, actually.
Yeah, but especially Chicago. It is. I thought at the marketing piece, right, which is education, or miseducation, this description of this beautiful multicultural city, right? I thought that it was a good thing until I learned, because I moved here from the South.
Okay.
I learned that it is the most rabidly segregated and racist city that I had ever lived in. And as I grew up in the deep South. So I say that because their culture in a box is what we are allowed in in Chicago. I'll just again use that as an example. And I say that as a cultural worker. I've been able to, blessed to train thousands of teens through a number of decades as a part of After School Matters programming, and even before that, to help them connect with what I was not taught as a young dancer. Anything but ballet and the European origins of everything, again, which is wrong. So what I want to say is we even need to look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 27 and 26, the rights to culture and education, so that we can determine for ourselves what that legal right means. It includes the right to intellectual property. It includes so many things that are denied, and culture has been reduced to the performance art piece. And it's not. It is the sum total of all of our experiences. And very often it is not only penalized, it is criminalized for people of African ancestry. When a young man goes in as one of the top, I believe he was a wrestler within the last year, and has to submit to having his locks, beautiful African cultural hair. I won't even say style. It's the way his hair grows. And he was affirming that, reaching back to home, to his African ancestry, had to submit to having it sheared off on the floor of this school, or he was not going to be able to compete in this, he had trained forever. What does that do to our young people? What does it do? I know as a parent what it would do to me, but it meant so much to him. One more thing. The cultural genocide is what we are charging. And we do have a statement that a global coalition has shared that is already circulating for this permanent forum on people of African descent. Specifically in the United States, the education that is coming through the poison music for our young people specifically is directly related to, and it's been documented, it's directly related to the genocidal and homicidal things that we are seeing in our communities. So I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vicky. It's almost 7 p.m. You have been watching the Progressive Minds show. I have here Dr. Vicky Casanova Wills, who works with PFAD, and Queen Mother Ayo Ifa Funke Osunye is also here with us. And then Cecil Johnson has been on the show and educating us, informing us about what their work is at PFAD, United Nations. And then we have Ambassador Reverend Kwame Kamau. I wanted to ask you how you got the name Kwame, because being a Ghanaian, I understand. I can connect. Kwame is a name for all Saturday borns, especially in the Akan and Ewe tribe. So how did you come up with Kwame, being a Trinidadian? I'm not saying we're not connected. I know we're all brothers, but typically Trinidadians don't. So can you give us a little bit connection?
Sure, I will. First of all, it's just mighty smart of you, intelligent of you, to have connected with that, have seen that, observed that. Yes, Kwame does mean born on a Saturday, but broken down even more etymologically, Kwame means, as it were, a servant of the time when we are in the Amen, which is the time of rest, which is a time of recuperation, which is a time of coming forth once again. And so you are quite right. My grandmother on my paternal side is a Kojo. if I say Kojo as a Ghanaian, what does that mean to you?
That's a
It
name.
means
That's Kojo is a name for Monday bronze, and I'm Kojo too. I'm called Kojo.
yes,
That's
but Kojo as a surname, someone who's carrying Kojo as a surname, which is to say that my African ancestors on the, as it were, paternal grandmother side do come from Ghana. That's to start with. But my father, certainly being the Mandinka that he is, he wanted, of course, to take on, again, by way of culture, by way of identity, by way of connecting back to roots. Because he was a fourth-degree black belt martial artist, he changed his name from Anthony Alfred Phillips to Nkomo Kamau. And so it meant that when I was born, I had no name changing to do. I was given Kwame because of our Ghanaian roots. And the term Kamau, Ka is from a Kemetic Medunecha perspective, spirit. Mao is in Mau Mau, warrior. So you have a spirit warrior. Some would say silent warrior, but anybody who has met me for more than 1 minute would know that I'm not a silent warrior. A spirit warrior, absolutely 1000%. Silent, not so much. And so from that perspective, these names come from and are born out of a man's desire in the diaspora to reconnect with his ancient Ghanaian roots as well as his ancient African roots in general, and is now exerting his right to have a name that is not identified or connected with the plantation owner, the overseer, or anybody that was a part of that system, taught us martial arts, taught us the drumming, taught us all of the African arts, gave us back our names, gave us a strong African history and identity. And so now I can be who I am because I stand on the back of an African giant, stood on the back of an African giant, and that tells us exactly why homeschooling, Afrocentric schooling, Ubuntu education, and culture is so very important. I am the very product of what we are talking about today.
Wow, that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. If you are watching and you want to share your opinion or ask a question, the number is 815-277-5047. Anybody wants to chime in, please feel free to do so. 815-277-5047. The number is at the right bottom corner on the screen. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Like the page, turn on the notification, and then share with friends so we can educate. We can all be part of this education. Thank you so much, Reverend Ambassador Reverend Kwame, for all the information and education this evening. I've learned a lot from you, and I hope that those who are watching have learned as well. I want to ask for the next few minutes. The right for culture and education. You, all of you, I'm assuming, were on the forum today. Okay, let's start with Cecile. What is your take on during the session? What would you say the whole session went? Have you been motivated? Are there things that you learned from? Basically, your take on the session today so far, and how optimistic are you for what is to come?
I'm very optimistic. Because today, they usually follow a very stringent time frame, and yet they allowed some people to talk longer. And so those people were able to express much deeper thoughts than the 2 or 5 minutes that they were supposed to talk, right? So that was encouraging. However, so I just think it was very positive. It was very positive, and I'm encouraged, but I know that, when the UN came to see us in 2016 and they put out the cry that
we're getting feedback. Hold on 1 second. I'll let you continue that thought, but we have a caller, and so it looks like we're getting feedback.
Okay.
Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Yes, my name is Christina.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
Hello?
Hi, how are you, Christina?
Good, thank you. I had a question for the panelists.
Yes, they can hear you.
In many cases, Americans, we spend a lot of time focusing on asking the government or different people, spending our attention on asking them for something. And I'm just wondering if you think that more attention needs to be spent on teaching our own community and getting and that we don't really have to ask anybody for anything else anymore. We just need to educate our people to come to our own schools and our own cultural institutions and stop asking white people or the powers to be for. I understand when it comes to reparations, but just about anything else, I think we need to stop asking white people for anything, and we need to build our own things. I'm just wondering what the panelists' thought is on that.
I see Ambassador's thumbs up. So you want to respond to that, and anybody else wants to respond to that, please go ahead. But Ambassador, you go. You first.
Sure, I will take the opportunity. First of all, thank you for such an erudite question. Salute to you. Yes, there is what we call internal reparations and there's external reparations. The external is what is owed to us by those colonial powers, those imperialists who raped and murdered our ancestors, threw them overboard as shark bait so that they can collect insurance. Those genocidal maniacs, what they owe us, that's the external reparations, the restitution, the compensation, the rehabilitation, the guarantees of non-repetition, the satisfaction. We owe ourselves something called internal reparations, and that's what we do for ourselves. That's what they were doing in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that we mislabel Black Wall Street. It had nothing to do with the capitalist, imperialist agenda that is Wall Street. It had everything to do with Black minds, Black hearts, Black industry coming together in cooperative societies, lend-a-hand societies, community-oriented societies to engage in Ubuntu economics. So that was a cooperative model where we did for ourselves. We had a circular economy where our love for self was strong, our African pride was strong, and let's see, based on the historical receipts, what happened to it. Because it was working and working phenomenally, not only was it destroyed by way of mobsters coming on foot, but we had people attacking it from in the air as if it was somehow a foreign a nation that they were bombing in terms of the process. So we have been historically as a people, the UNIA movement, the EWF movement, so many movements have started based on that desire to do for self. What did they do with Marcus Messiah Garvey? They, of course, incarcerated him and then sent him back with a broken heart to Jamaica, where he didn't, live very long after that. What did they do with his Imperial Majesty and his EWF, Ethiopian World Federation for the Diaspora? Well, through the Derg forces that had European influence, Eastern European influence, they invaded. They took him, of course, captive. They murdered him and buried him under a toilet. So when we see what we've tried to do for ourselves, it's not for a lack of trying or wanting. It's always this pushback every time. So yes, people like myself and all of the panelists here, we believe in that do for self. We believe in that Ubuntu movement. I am a homeschooler. I am the convener of the Afrocentric Homeschoolers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And everyone in this room, through culture, through media, through arts, through diplomacy, through a number of modalities, we are seeking to do for self. It's a brilliant question, and I thank you for it. And the answer is absolutely yes.
Wow. Thank you, Christina, for the call, and thank you, Reverend, for Ambassador Reverend for Kwame, for your response. From what you have shared, it feels as though one would feel, somebody watching, one would feel like, okay, well, if we want to do something and there are external forces that are preventing us from doing for ourselves, then we might as well just forget it. Isn't it a signal for let's give up and let's just integrate and let's call it a day?
Our people have never given up, or we would not be here. You are such a brilliant moderator, motivator, etc. You are. You had, aside from speaking with Sister Cecile, who is just a master researcher, analyst, and educator, and aside from just talking with me only a few times in the last 6 months, I think, maybe 2 or 3 times, you've never met the other two. And look at what you have helped bring out of the questions this evening. But I'm going to say our people never have given up. Never. And had they done so, none of us would be here right now. So part of what we do when we're gathering together, either online or in person, is we spark each other's creativity, right? We reinvigorate and reactivate that right to culture, and that the miseducation has attempted to sever from us and to erase and to invisibilize, but that cultural memory is still there, still sharp, and still is in scriptures and a whole lot of other places. It's in the science, it works. And so we imagine and envision, and then I'm learning from our Afrofuturists that then we reverse engineer the reality that we want to see in the future. That's what happened when the colonizers sat down and carved up Africa. And then they created this vision where 10% or less would literally dominate everything and everyone. But the key point, I think, for me, is that we need to listen to what we just heard, and we know, and we have a sister right here from not too far from Tulsa. Every time people of African ancestry have built anything, including what they had to begin with, the forces to destroy, deny, extract have been fierce. So that is part of our repertory justice strategies and ideation that must happen, is how do we protect it? How do we protect each other? How do we protect our allies who are not melanated people, who are also trying to do the right thing? Because it's one thing to give me something, but if I can't get a block before you mug me or whatever else, then
No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Senator, this is called self-determination.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which the United States did ratify, right? Article 1 says all people have a right to self-determination. We are clearly not self-determined. We're clearly not self-determined. In every area of our lives in the United States, we are substandard. And I've proven that this is genocide, right? So it's ethnocide because they've stolen our culture. And when you look at Africans and others who come here after, and most of them, by the time their children get here and go through the Americanization process, some of them even lose their languages, Senna. So even though you're having these cultural festivals, what do the children really know about their culture? They want to fit in. They want to be American. And being an American is a figment of some white people's imagination, right? And it's a nightmare for us. These children have a right to learn their culture. So you're going to see in your first and second generation, that your children are going to fall by the wayside like ours because of this, many of them are not learning their languages, etc. Right? So that's something that you need to be careful of. So self-determination is what this is, our right to our political, cultural, social, institutions. And that's what we've not had. And we want enforcement of that, because when something is passed, Vicky loves to say this, if it's passed, right, and they ratify it, then it is the highest law of the land. So we want to see it implemented. Why do we not have self-determination? And what the brother mentioned about Black Wall Street, and it's so many others. It's so many others. There's cities that are under lakes, right? Because things that are for us are always targeted. So I never thought that I would get to this point. But in every area of our lives, I can prove how we have been sabotaged. So they're trying to wipe us out, right? And in fact, the data predicts that by 2050, right? And this was from 2010, we would be less proportionate. We'd be like 11.9% of the population. So instead of us growing, we would be decreasing proportionately, right? So this is very important. Our children need to learn to love themselves.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your input. Having shared what you shared, Cecile, again, should people be optimistic or pessimists? Should people be scared of what's going to happen to us? They're trying to wipe us out. Okay, So should people still, like you said, Dr. Vic? Yes, African people, Black people have always been people of strength, people of hope. And so, so we're always going to push through any type of circumstances or difficulties. But Queen Mother, you've been listening quietly for some time. Your take on all of this.
Waiting my turn. So I would like to add that I am a former teacher of the Kansas City, Missouri School District, as well as I am a product of the miseducation of the Kansas City, Missouri School District, like many others in this country. Okay. So when I was a teacher, it was very difficult to teach according to their rules because they have a curriculum and they created for us to teach our kids like they did me. And that curriculum didn't teach me anything. I had to leave there, go to the library after I graduated from high school to learn how to exist in this world, how to read, how to write, and how to speak properly. And the system made me realize that we need to teach our own. We need to stop going to the colonizer, getting mad because he's not teaching us and our children what they need to learn. The colonizer teaches colonization. You're his slave, so learn this. I'm teaching you this. We have to teach our own culture along with education to bring our children up. And yes, we're in a society now that all the kids want to be like whoever. They want to be like, they want to be like that, be like those, be like them. And they're missing out on the real education because we have lost the village. And those of us here today are part of reestablishing the village. The village teaches the village. So I have observed in our society that I won't call names of organizations and religious teachings, but they send their kids to certain schools that they pay a lot of money for. When they leave there, they go to the temple to be taught their culture / religious teachings. We need to get back to doing that.
Okay. No, thank you so much for sharing, Queen Mother. And I think you made very great points, and all of you, and I really want to appreciate that. Thank you so much. 815-277-5047. We are almost about to wrap up tonight's discussion. We have been talking to my guests from PATHAD, who are talking about the rights to education, right to culture and education. And I asked Cecile earlier her take or her optimism when it comes to how the forum, how the session had gone today. She expressed that, and I want to get that from Kwame as well, Ambassador Kwame, and then from Queen Mother. How do you feel about the conversation so far? Quickly, because of time, I just want to get your brief thoughts or feeling about how the session went so far, Ambassador.
Well, I'll have to pass on this one because while I did catch some of it, my very hectic schedule did not allow for me to view all of today's session. So I would want to being an analytical brother, to go through it with a fine-tooth comb before I can respond to that. So I will turn to the my senior political analyst and advisor in Madam Ambassador Dr. Vicky for advice in relation to that. So I'll defer to her.
Okay, great. Before you do so, Coy says, excellent show, best one I have seen. You do big ups. Thank you, Coy. And Rebecca Mode is also here with us. Rebecca, thank you for joining the show. And Christina, thank you for calling and chiming in. Queen Mother, you said something about bringing back the village, which is a very profound topic now because people are talking about it. Like, you hear a lot of millennials, engaging in that type of conversation. The sad thing for me as an African is that when I look at my community, there seem to be a lot of Africans who don't necessarily teach their children their native languages. Unlike the Hispanic and the Hispanic and Latino. I mean, the Latino community, and
Yes.
then the Arab communities, the other communities, right? Even in the Indian community, you see these kids speaking both languages, fluently, and right from the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, I've seen kids, Latino community especially, they're very bilingual. I mean, that is a given. African, a lot of times, in my own Ghanaian community here in Chicago, there are a ton of kids who cannot put two or three words together. They bear African names, but they can't put and they speak English fluently. Their parents speak English to them, which is, I've seen it several times, and it's heartbreaking. What do you think is the reason for that, and how can we break through that? Maybe a quick advice on how we can break through that. Because of time, so I would encourage that you make it brief for us, Queen Mother, and then I'll go to Dr. Vicky.
How to break through that?
Yeah, I mean, your advice. I mean, what's up with that?
What we're doing now,
Mm-hmm.
and to keep spreading what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's been colonized all over the planet.
Right.
So that colonization has gone generations deep.
Okay.
The only way we can combat that is what we're doing now.
Okay.
Talking about it and telling people, get back to who you are. You've learned who they are, and that's not you. It doesn't fit. We never wore it well, but we struggled through it. So let's get back to what we know to do.
Thank you.
What old folks did.
No, thank you so much. Cecile.
That's what you're experiencing is the Americanization process. What pains me is when I meet an African and they got an English or somebody else's name, right? Because we lost our name because they took it from us. And you willingly give up your names. Shame on you, right? It really hurts me because my ancestors, I'm like, I have an excuse, right?
Right.
But what is your excuse? So that same excuse, because many of you go through some religious indoctrination and Catholicism, and most of those places when they baptizing you, you got to have an English name or whatever else, right? So that's what you have to start doing, rejecting that. You come to my continent, come to my country. I need to keep my name. In fact, you need to change your name to come talk to me, right?
But somebody will say,
so that's part of the problem, Senna.
Okay,
that's part of the problem. You're trying to fit in too hard.
Absolutely, the Christian will say, or people who even practice, Judaism or other religions will say, look, the Bible has all these English names, and so because we are religious people and we want to associate with the story of the Bible, it's actually Africans are proud to take names from the Bible because to them it's that type of connection. They feel elevated by having names like Hosea, Elijah, all these prophets who were in the Bible. To the African, they deem it perfect. It's right. It's spiritual. Actually, they're proud of it. So how do you talk to this African to do otherwise? Vicky, I know we lost you for a second. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I'm so sorry. I muted because one of the things that happens when over 1,000 delegates from civil society convene for a UN forum like this, there's so much in so many different languages, and there are these side events and also media opportunities like what you're helping provide. And so I literally had to move out of this space that I'm right at the church center for the United Nations. That's literally, when I look out, you could see the flags and so forth. But things are closing up and I had to get on the elevator to come down. So I apologize for your audience that I've been moving around so much, but that was why.
No, we definitely do understand, and good to have you back in the studio. We're about to wrap up, but the question that I asked, I don't know, any of you can take this on. And I must say that Reverend Ambassador, okay, go ahead, Reverend Ambassador. Actually, you've already won one of our audience who would want to work with you seriously. She does a lot of work with the Hebrew and connecting with the African heritage here in the African American community. So there's somebody who really wants you on her team working with you. So after we're gonna make some introductions, some connections after this conversation. But go ahead with your response, Ambassador.
Sure. So again, back to the same themes that keep reoccurring: culture, identity, self-determination. All of those themes keep reoccurring. No matter what question is asked, the answer is still the same. But I want to give some contextual and historical framework.
Quickly.
Very quickly. When we look at the name James, the name James is English, but that word James comes from the word Jacob, which is still a bastardization. The original word is Yakubi, and it has African roots. So what we are doing as a people for quite a long while now, and so to do all of the biblical names, because the ancient African Israelites who came out of Kemet, ancient Egypt, were a mixed multitude of Bantu tribes. We have the evidence now. We have the genetic evidence. We have the linguistic evidence. We have the ancient maps. We have the cranial fossils. We have all of these things to tell the story. But again, the problem is because we don't own the media outlets, say for this one, because we are not in control of the mass media, because we're not in control of the school system, we don't get to share the narrative. There are several indigenous African names that are the precursors of what became the bastardization that is now printed in the modern Judeo-Christian Bibles. So in summary, don't be a carbon copy to a carbon copy. Overstand according to Rastafari who and what you are and the power, the pathos of that, and stand in that very powerful, majestic, royal African identity, and everything will be all right. Absolutely would have no problem connecting with the sister and being a part of whatever solutions that can come out of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow. And Vicky, I'm going to ask you your thoughts on the sessions, but I'll have you put it in your closing remarks. It's been very, very exciting and informative this evening to learn from the scholars, researchers. I've known Cecile for a long time. She's a master researcher, and these brilliant minds who have come to share what they are doing at the United Nations for people of African descent, PFAD, what they're doing in terms of working to maintain the culture of the people of African descent, the rights to their culture, the rights to education, these key things that people of African descent hold dear to their culture and to their people. And so kudos to the work that you're doing. We hope that perhaps African presidents can add their voice, or just not just president, but diplomats and these royals and kings in Africa can add their voice to your work to give you the push and the results that you're looking for. We want to also announce to our audience that the exchange ceremony scheduled for June 24th is coming on live in Chicago. The concept of the exchange is restoring the royalty of the diaspora and with that which was taken away. And the only way to bridge the gap and to restore our lost royalty, at least for those who lost their royalty and their culture, like Cecile was saying, is to bring our kings from Africa to perform this rites, which is crowning kings and queens, making royals, honoring our people who have achieved a lot in our communities with royalty, true African royalty. So we have a king coming. His name is His Royal Majesty Togbe Nyaho Tamaklo, the Sixth of the Anglo Kingdom. He was here in Chicago last year we crowned Reverend Justice Justice for starters. That's when we began the royalty restoration. This year, we're going to do it June 24th at the Karen Center for the Arts. It's going to be on the west side of Chicago. We purposely chose the west side because that area needs a lot of cultural activities to bring in the youth, to bring out the kings and royals in the youth in that community. We need to do these things to uplift our people. So June 24th in Chicago, come and witness the coronation of Congressman Danny Davis and a host of very important people here in the city and around. It's going to be a magnificent ceremony. This is the only place you get to see the coronation of kings and queens in the diaspora in Chicago alone. And we are proud to be bringing this program to our people. So June 24th, at the Karen Center for the Arts. It starts at 4 p.m. reception. 6 p.m. will be the show. Will be showtime, and we promise you that you're going to witness an event that will bring healing and the connection of the African diaspora. Very, very important. We have a panel discussion on Friday at Rainbow Push, which is going to be the 23rd, and then on the 23rd, we're going to have a panel discussion of our history, the mental health of the diaspora. Are we struggling with mental health? Has our history affected us as a people? We want to discuss all of that during the panel discussion, which is going to be at the Rainbow Push headquarters. But prior to that, we'll also have a business meeting at the DuSable Museum. We are proud to partner with the Illinois Black Caucus Foundation to bring you this exciting event. But the main event is the 24th, which is a Saturday, June 24th, Saturday, Chicago. It's going to be wonderful. So get your tickets. Tickets are available on Eventbrite, and please put the word out there. Come to Chicago and witness this magnificent royal celebration of our people. That said, I would like to go back to my guests to give us their closing remarks. I think we unfortunately lost Dr. Vicky again, but I'll start with Queen Mother. You know what? I want to end with Queen Mother. So let's start with Cecile. Your closing remarks, please.
I just want to say that we're going to be at the permanent forum for the next few days. I'm actually just coming on through Zoom, right? Okay. So I would encourage you to join. Go to the UN website and look for the permanent forum, second forum, and join us. Okay. And be encouraged, folks. Listen, we don't waste time doing things because we think we're going to fail. We are going to win this battle because our cause is just. So join us. And the UN had said to us, years ago, they will support what we do, meaning we need to do something. So what we are doing by all of us from around the earth, right? All of us from around the globe talking and saying the same thing. That's really going to help because now people around the world will understand what's happening. And I think we're going to get a lot of traction. So I'm very positive about what's going to happen because I'm going to do what I need to do. And everybody else on this platform is going to do the same thing.
And when did you say is the next session?
Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So that's 9 a.m. Chicago time. Okay. And the theme is the continued Pan-Africanism for dignity, justice, and peace. Tomorrow.
Can you please say that again?
It's the theme tomorrow at 9 a.m. Chicago time is thematic discussions, Pan-Africanism for dignity, justice, and peace. That's from 10 to 1. Okay. Right? And then at 3 o'clock, they're going to have another thematic discussion, which is going to be transnational migration.
Got it.
So please join us until June 2nd.
Thank you so much. Your closing remarks, please, Ambassador Reverend.
Sure. I'll take a cue from her last statement. This whole issue of transnational migration. There have been many an African who's lost his or her life en route to Europe, 3,000 a year by way of boat trying to get to Spain. We saw a crime against humanity recently when Africans trying to enter Spain by way of its enclaves in Morocco were bludgeoned to death in the scores. We are living in a sad dystopian reality. There are slaves being traded in Libya today. There are all kinds of other atrocities being meted out to us. Human trafficking, sex trafficking, and of course, your everyday garden variety racial discrimination. I'm saying to us, the only way forward is together. So while I believe in lobbying and advocacy, I believe in constitutional and legal and lawful actions even more. And so there is a move right now within the forum to request of the permanent forum to request, as it were, from the ICJ an opinion as it relates to our status. What is our status as descendants or should we say people of African ancestry? What is our status in the law? Are we prisoners of war of the Dom de Versailles Total War Declaration by Pope Nicholas I for the 5th of 1452, 18 June? Or are we citizens? If indeed we are prisoners of war, which is what the ethnocide and the genocide tells us, because you don't treat citizens like that, then we are owed reparations and repatriation. And I'm very big on both of them. It's in my very appellation, African Reparations Minister. And we are taking groups of us from the diaspora who want to return home back to our native land. And so we are making those connections. So yes, advocacy is good. Yes, lobbying is good. But we need to know what our legal status is in the diaspora, and we need to be able to file legal motions and lawsuits to all of the relevant agencies based on knowing what that legal status is, so we can get the ball rolling. I'll end with that simply by thanking you for your time and for your facilitation. You've been doing human service on this program tonight, and I'm really hoping to meet with you again and your wonderful loyal listeners. And in a way that I can assist, please let me know. I'd be more than happy.
Thank you so much. You've said a lot of things and given us a lot of information. And the last one thing that I'm among the many things that I learned from you this evening, you said we're moving our people back to the roots. Where are you talking about specifically?
Okay, so that's the good news.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, so that's the good news. There are multiple areas and multiple royals that have extended an invitation and have granted lands to the diaspora, inclusive of but not limited to Zambia, inclusive of but not limited to South Africa. And yes, right in your backyard there in Ghana, we are having talks with royals on the ground right now. Already we have hundreds of thousands of hectares of land that have been donated, contributed towards that repatriation cause and effort. And so I'm really, really excited to be a diplomat, a royal / civil society diplomat in the middle of this very history-making, historically significant exercise that is being conducted. But every day we are hearing about more and more invitations. Right now we are negotiating in Malawi, among other places. So opportunities are opening up every day. We are happy to hear about it. We are happy to meet and greet with our royals. And we know that we are better together. The continent and the diaspora need to come together. The two sticks need to come together and realize our greatest vision and dream.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me. And I really appreciate that. Queen Mother, please close us with your royalness.
Thank you. Well, in closing, I would like to say to those listening that we need you. This has to be done together. We have been disconnected far too long by the colonizer who did that on purpose. We need you and you need us. We need more people coming in on the permanent forum. We need more people forming groups to bring us together. It is time. And we need young people.
Okay.
Because we've done a lot of study and research and experience. We need young people. Now go get the young people and bring them to the permanent forum. Bring them to activities that gets them off the street doing what the colonizer trained them to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Ashe.
Thank you so much, Ashe.
And thank you so much for this platform for us to share our knowledge and our expertise.
Thank you again. I really appreciate your coming on the show and sharing my honorable guest, Queen Mother Awo, Ifafunke Osunye, Reverend Ambassador Kwame Kamau, also a member of PIFAD. Cecil Johnson is also a human rights defender and founder. She's also with PIFAD. Unfortunately, we lost Dr. Vicky, who orchestrated all of this, and fortunately, she is always here with us, and we would make sure we get her on the show very soon. We're looking forward to engaging you guys again, because this is a very, very important conversation, and we appreciate your coming. So we want to thank everyone for sticking with us from the beginning. We wanted to do this show in an hour and 30 minutes, but I'm sure it's been all worth it for you who have been here since 6 p.m. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Our system seems to be working a little bit much better. We thank you all for the support. Please keep it coming in. You can go on our website, The Progressive Mind Show, and make a donation. We are 501c. Your support helps us to bring these programs and more programs such as this week in, week out. We are here every Tuesday from 6 to 7, 8 p.m. And then on Sundays from 4 to 6. So Tuesdays 6 to 8 p.m. Sundays 4 to 6. Remember that to whom much is given, much is required. I've been your host, Senna, and keep praying for Chanel, our co-host, so she gets better. Hopefully we can get her on our next episode. Thank you again for all those who supported. Christina King, for your call, and for all our loved ones. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining. I see Isaac Tachi, you just joined us. Oh, and Jemima Plunge, you were on here as well. And Tomisha Bennett, you guys were on here, and we truly appreciate you. To my brilliant guests, have a wonderful evening. We shall be engaging you guys very soon. Bye-bye.